Introducing me today. I- you my introducer?
I'm your introducer. Shall we get started? Yeah.
Yeah, it's time to go.
Morning, everyone. Paul's going to talk to us about tribalism in American politics.
Identities. Okay. I recognize a lot of identities here. Thank you.
With that,
So, as you can see, the popularity of this class is beyond words.
They're lined up in the hallway.
To all you folks in the class, at home, and in ships at sea. Oh, okay, Ed, could you make this a little? It's not my speaking; it's the microphone.
It doesn't sound like it's on. Do you have it on?
Yeah, it's on. It's on? No, it's not on. Hello. All right. Greetings all. Last time I was introducing the subject of tribes, and I think I scared a few people who, from a little feedback that I got, these folks drew a conclusion that being in a tribe meant losing your individuality, losing your creativity, losing your independence, and that is not true. And so in order to clarify this, I'm going to take a few minutes to talk about a typology of tribes or groups. And and so I did some scrolling, and it really is scrolling on the board. So if you're having trouble seeing, I'll get out of the way. The first thing I want to say is that there are different kinds of groups or tribes, and it's to some extent situational. In other words, what's a group? You're a group. People on a bus are a group. The people who turn out to demonstrate in Minneapolis over the death of Renee Good are a group. So it's just a bunch of people getting together and for whatever reason and then dispersing. So that a group has no long-term life. It's just a bunch of people coming together for a reason. The next kind of group is, and increasingly, this is an acronym SIG, S-I-G, that's used to describe this type of group. It's special interest group. But a lot of folks are very lazy, so they use SIG to denote a special interest group. And you'll see that written in many places. A special interest group is something that has a longer term life. It's a group of people, like women who get together, or men, I don't want to be sexist, to knit. We have a group here like that. Or it's people who come together in a classroom, like you're doing, because you have a special interest in whatever the subject is. The special interest groups abound. Most clubs are special interest groups, but it goes beyond that. Doctors are a special interest group. Engineers, electrical engineers are a special interest group. Nurses are a special interest group. And so these are folks that have shared goals, shared values, shared vocabulary, perhaps. And so they are, as the term implies, interested in a special interest, not a universal interest, but something that ties them together and causes them to relate with each other and meet certain goals that they've set or values that they apply to whatever the interest is of an interest group. Airline controllers are a special interest group. Okay? Is that clear? All right. The third kind of group is a loose-knit tribe. So what's a tribe? In terms of looseness or tightness, a tight-knit group. Well, a loose-knit group or a loose-knit tribe, once again, can go back to certain specialties of doctors. I said doctors were a special interest group, and they are. But what about pediatricians or vascular surgeons? All right, they are much smaller, and tribes tend to be more able to function as smaller groups, because once they get too large, then it becomes difficult for control. That is from the standpoint of actual structure and from the perspective of people within the tribe who relate to one another and to the goals and the mission of the tribe. I'm making a distinction because from people outside the tribe, it doesn't matter. You can be very large. And I'll get back to that to clarify what I mean in just a moment. But to continue from the standpoint of what I've put on the board, a loose-knit tribe means that, let's say, pediatricians are a loose-knit tribe, especially in a given hospital where they're working as a team, or orthopedists, or any specialty that works in a given setting, like a hospital, comes together as a tribe, and that's a smaller group. But if you're in a major medical center, it can be a very large group. A teaching hospital, for example, has a much larger group of physicians, ranging from attending physicians to first, second, or third year residents, first year residents or interns, and they do teaching and they do research and they do patient care, and so it's a very busy and diverse kind of a tribe, but they're all there for a reason, and they all have similar characteristics. They're all doctors. They're all interested in whatever that specialty is, and knowledgeable about it, and competent about it, and taking continual learning about it. But it allows, the looseness allows people within that group to be themselves. Although they are tribal in the sense that they have shared values, shared goals, shared language, shared practices or methods, and they're very tight, it's situational. They become much tighter when the administration of the hospital proposes to do something that they don't like, or when people join a union. Okay, when employees join a union, then they become a tribe because they're interested in the same things, and they speak the same language, and they have the same goals, and they're interested in safety, in wages, in working conditions, in how people get promoted or hired or fired, and that's a union. And so a union is a good example of a tribe. It can be, but it's a loose tribe because people within it don't lose their individuality, don't lose their ability to be creative, don't lose their own competence. Even the mafia which is very tribal, or any criminal kind of organization that's structured, Murder Incorporated. That used to be a group that I knew when I was a kid. I actually attended the trial of a murderer from Murder Incorporated when I was only 9 years old. But even that group wants people of different abilities. You don't want only killers. You want accountants, and you want people to drive cars, and in other words, you want people of special skills to be part of that group, even though it's a tribe. So a tribe doesn't imply that everybody is homogeneous, or you lose your individuality. Can you innovate? Can you propose changes? Over time, does the technology change that whatever that special interest is that's bringing people together as a tribe? Sure. And it's situational, as I said. Even a loose group of doctors who don't always agree on policies, but agree mostly on most things, will come together when an administrator proposes something that they don't like, or when the government proposes something that they don't like. And then they will come together as a tight-knit group, just the way a union comes together when they decide that they need to strike. Follow? Okay, so then what's a tight-knit tribe? Well, it's easy to see when you look at Washington, D.C., and you look at the White House. Is that a close-knit tribe? The other day, I heard J.D. Vance talking about the poor lady who was killed in Minneapolis, Renee Good. And it made me realize how close-knit that tribe is. The West Wing of the White House. But it goes beyond that. It goes beyond the people around the president, his Stephen Miller, and all of these advisors and the vice president and the communications people. It goes beyond that because there's something called, which we don't hear about, the executive office of the president. And that executive office of the president can have 500 people working in it. And their job is manifold to create the circumstances under which a president can oversee a country of 350 million people. So that is a close-knit tribe. The devotion, the ideals are shared by everyone. The values are shared by everyone. The loyalty and the devotion is shared by everyone. And there's a person at the head of it, the leader. And a close-knit tribe could be a mafia gang, or it could be a skinhead group of haters, or it could be the White House, or it could be anything that has a very tight-knit structure and a leader to whom everyone is subordinate, as it is in the White House. Any questions or comments about what I've said so far? All right, yes.
Religious groups would be, they can be tight-knit too, right?
What's tight-knit? What could be tight-knit?
Religion.
Oh, a religious group. Yes, of course. Many religious groups are tight-knit. because they are ideological in the sense that they subscribe to a religious doctrine that tells them how to behave and what kind of a future they can expect, and how to prepare for it, and their belief system is very comparable. Well, that's a tight-knit group also, or not. If you're a Unitarian, no. Right? So now that, as I said earlier, that's from the inside out, looking outside, from inside. What kind of a group? Loose groups can be tight if the situation requires it, and then they become loose again. But a tight-knit group doesn't change. The White House is not going to change. The executive office of the president is not going to change. But J.D. Vance also gave us an example, a shameless example, a repugnant example of the other way of seeing a tribe. But before I do that, I'll talk about this triangle here. Are you familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of need? Well, if you're not familiar, how many are not familiar with it? Okay, well then, Abraham Maslow was a great humanist and psychologist. He came up with probably the best simple explanation of what motivates people. And he's called it the hierarchy of need, and he divided it into five parts. Said the survival, basic survival, is our basic need. That is a place to live, food to eat, a place to keep warm in winter and dry in rain. Follow? The simple survival necessities. Now, once you have those, you're motivated to go to the next step in the hierarchy of need, and that's the viability step. That's where you move into the suburb, or you buy a house. You're living in a cave down here, and now you're moving into an apartment up here. That's the next level, where you can now meet people and make friends and go to work and get a job, whatever is the next step in the development. It could be an individual, it could be a family. The third is esteem. Now, it's not enough just to live somewhere and work somewhere and commute if necessary. You need, and have friends, you need to be liked. You need esteem. We all need that. Is there a psychologist in the crowd? But I guess we know that, don't we? We don't have to be psychologists. We know that we need to be liked and respected. We need to have our autocracy, our dignity recognized. And that's the third step on the hierarchy of need. And the fourth step is love. It's one thing to be liked, it's another thing to be loved. And I must say that when, let's say you have a partner, you have a girlfriend, boyfriend, man friend, lady friend, whatever, whoever, and you're happy, and then something happens and it falls apart. What happens next? You go right down the hierarchy. Once you don't have what it is you're looking for, remember this is about motivation. You go down to the level below and you start all over again. And that's the way we work. That's the way we're wired. The apex of this is something most people never realize, and that's self-actualization. That is when you have finally achieved whatever it is that you are able to achieve, when you are happy. I used to look at my wife, and she was the happiest person I knew. And I said, there is a lady who is actualized. Perhaps you are. If you are, I'm happy for you. So self-actualization. So now you don't lose this when you get here, when you become part of a tribe, depending on the closeness of the tribe, where if you deviate, you are punished, you see. If you express your individuality, then it is you don't belong there anymore. Now, is that clear? Does anybody have a question about what I just said? Okay, so that's Maslow. Now, and this is, yes?
I was thinking in all those groups that you mentioned that oftentimes it's a degree of boundary that increases as you go. There are certain requirements to be part of a doctor's group. You have to have an MD. There are certain requirements to be part of Trump's group. You have to be super loyal.
Does everybody hear her? No, we need the microphone. Sorry, Elaine.
I'm sorry, yeah. So when I look at those groups, I got to think that often there are requirements to create the edge of the group. You know, you have to, special interest group is pretty loose, but you have to have an interest in the topic. A loose group of doctors in a hospital all have to have an MD. There has to be a requirement for the edge of that group.
Yes.
And then a tight group, the requirement is so tight, the requirement is so small, like loyalty to Trump is the only thing. Then that's when you lose your individuality.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
You lose the individuality once you substitute for it devotion to the leader or the values of the group. And then what happens if you disagree? If you try to express your individuality, you have to leave. Okay? Either you're kicked out or you resign. Now, getting back to Mr. Vance, what he said about Renee Good is that it was clear to him and all those people in that tribe that she was a member of Antifa and she was working as a terrorist to undo the democratic law enforcement to protect the people of Minneapolis by her action against the ICE officers. He said that. I heard him say that. Maybe you did too. Shameless. But that takes me now to the next step that I wanted to tell you, the outside-in perspective of a tribe. I was talking here about the inside out, the structure of a tribe and how it works and what it takes. But there are many people who are Jewish, although a small percentage of the population, I must say, about 5% of American population, although a lot of people think it's much higher. But there are Hasidic Jews, Orthodox, very Orthodox Jews, known as Black Hatters, regular day-to-day Orthodox guys and gals who you'll find guys wearing yarmulkes but otherwise street clothes. They're the regular, just the modern Orthodox. You have the secular Jews. You have the Reform Jews. You got a lot of groups of Jews. Okay, Each group may be a tribe or maybe not, but they're quite diverse. To a member of the Ku Klux Klan, what are they? Jews. To the Nazi Germany, they were Jews. That's all it took. There is no division. They are all one thing. When blacks come to America, they can be descendants of slaves. They can be from Africa, or they can be from the Caribbean. But in Jim Crow eyes, what are they? Black. You see, to J.D. Vance, what is a person who obstructs an ICE in the performance of duty? A terrorist. It's the same principle. It doesn't matter how you see yourself. It matters how people see you. That determines what the politics are going to be. You can act on the basis, and we're going to talk about politics in just a moment, but you can act on the basis of what you believe and what the values and the goals of the group are and what they are for you as an individual in the group, in any group. But to the people outside who are looking at you, it's quite different. And they also have the ability to develop politics that affect you. Okay, so that's the categorization aspect. How does the social system categorize who you are? And they generalize. Doesn't matter if you can be an evangelical Christian, you can be a Catholic, a Roman Catholic, you can be an Orthodox Catholic. It doesn't matter. You're a Christian. And the Protestant, remember the war between the Protestants and the Christians? It becomes generalizable. And that's how the outside sees people, as different from how the inside looking out sees themselves. Okay, I'll stop right there and say, before I go on, is there anything you want to say? Okay, let us go. Thank you. Yes, Toma.
When you're talking about the
Hang on one second.
when you're talking about the self-actualized at the top,
Yes.
the Maslow thing, would you put people like Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr., would you put them in that category?
Look, see, I'm like what I was just saying. I'm on the outside looking in. I would. I don't know how they saw themselves.
I think that was my question, because I think that, like with Martin Luther King Jr., you know, when he said, I may not be able to go with you across the, into the promised land. Uh-huh.
Right.
Yeah, but he believed that there was a promised land and that people would go there.
Right.
And it, you know, I think he saw himself as somebody who really wanted to help that to happen.
Yes.
So, I mean, I see those people as the apex of what we would all strive to be.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I'd like to, we must move forward now. Ed, I'm ready. Let's give a hand to Ed. Okay. All right, thank you. We take a few seconds for this to light up. 1, 2, 3. That's at about 20 seconds.
Maybe.
Anything going on, Ed?
There you go.
Okay, thank you. All right. Um, all right, what we go now to class 2 and politics, the short primer on politics. All right, now when I don't know how to move this over. Is there? Can we center this better?
Select the bar at the bottom.
Oh,
See that bar? Slide it over. To the left. Let me do it.
okay. Oh, thank you. Yes, Ed deserves a hand. Okay, this is important here. As a student of management, which I was in my past, whenever I would read about politics, it was always about power. My take on politics is quite different. I don't see politics as about power, so I put that into this handout for you. And I'll just read it. All right. Although most definitions characterize politics as a struggle for power, I believe that this is too limited a view. Since power is a means to an end, it doesn't have to be the end. Many political efforts have little to do with power. Instead, they are efforts to gain some advantage. And that, to my thinking, is the crux of politics. It's gaining an advantage. Power may be a means to an end for this, but power may not be a goal. For example, and I'm citing Francis Fukuyama here. Fukuyama sees identity politics as a need to be recognized, to have one's dignity acknowledged. Yes, consider a worker who feels disrespected and seeks higher status. This is similar to the efforts of many women who are well paid but see men in the same jobs who are better paid. They may engage in company or state politics for justice via economic equality. So they're not looking for power, but they are using politics to gain whatever it is they need and want, power, the status, or equal pay for equal work. Consider other workers who want better health and safety protections in their jobs and become political activists to achieve this. The two R's of political striving are recognition and results. We should be aware that the goals of political identity, politics, may not be restricted to local or national elections or government laws and regulations. There are political dynamics within companies, unions, universities, and departments of complex organizations. These may fall under the headings of organizational politics as well as crisis management. Now, I've listed some types of political action. I've also been thinking more about it, and I've added a few that are not on the lists, which I'll state for you. But rather than leaving this, if you just look those over and see if there's anything that you don't understand. Yes, Toma. Just one moment.
do you make a distinction between the politician who is doing what he is doing because he wants power or publicity or whatever for self-aggrandizement, as opposed to politicians who do something because they believe that it is better for people who need that kind of thing?
Well, when we talk about political dynamics, we're talking about means to gain an advantage. So what's the advantage for the politician that you are describing?
Well, I'm describing two types. I'm describing both the Trumpers, but
Yes.
also I'm describing the politicians who really believe that people need medical care, that they need to, the ACA needs to be.
Yes. Well, if a politician wants to stay in office, that is one who is elected, not appointed, then that person has to satisfy constituents.
Right.
And but there are various benefits that the politician gains. What I believe motivates a lot of Republican politicians is careerism. They just want to stay in office, and they will do anything that is necessary to stay in office.
Well, they have very good, what do they call it? Benefits, particularly in their, they've got really good health benefits.
Yes,
They
that's
got
why they got good jobs,
They've got
and they
good
don't want
jobs.
to leave them.
They've got a great,
Yes.
I've lost the word again.
So by doing good for others, they're doing good for themselves. In other words, if their constituents are happy, they'll reelect them, and they're deathly afraid of not being reelected. Yes, ma'am.
Paul, it feels like you're describing something that went away last January. That it seems to me that most of us observing what's going on in the last year are observing a grab for power rather than advantage.
Well, again, the question is not what one person is seeking who is the head of a fairly close-knit tribe, Mr. Trump. You will find all sorts of motives in politics, and power is the motive of some people who want to be whatever it is, liked, loved, or respected. You'd have to look at the motivation of Mr. Trump. What is it that power gives him? It is giving him something. It's giving him money. It's giving him recognition. Now, do we think that that's what he needs? He needs to be loved. He's somewhere on Maslow's hierarchy of need who's motivated by needing to be loved. That's what it looks like. Right, Nancy?
I think he's basically trying to stay out of prison. But the other thing that I think is interesting about the tight-knit group is that as long as the leader appears to be all-powerful, everybody follows in line. I personally wonder whether the level of vulnerability that's visible now in the president's behavior means that while people all look like they're towing the same line, they're actually all waiting to see who's going to stab who in the back to take over. Mm-hmm. And I think that is something that happens in tight-knit groups because the leader, there's no other means to replace the leader. Is that getting close to the theory of what you're talking about?
I think that's valid. Yes, Joan.
I'm wondering about Marjorie Taylor Greene, and she was part of the tight-knit MAGA group, but she seems to be stepping away from that in a way.
She resigned from that group, and so did Liz Cheney. So the point is, I think, as I've said, if you're not going to be part of it, you got to get out. Either you will get out or they will thrust you out. Yes.
I sense that many politicians, especially the new ones, feel that they have a mission, but they have dues to pay till they get to the point where they can affect their mission, get their mission going. In other words, you have to go along with things you don't agree with, which you might even think are terrible, to get your chance, to get your mission going. I sense this from our politicians.
Yes. Yeah. There are many things. You know, a lot of us ask, how could Republican politicians in Congress agree to the things that they're agreeing to, or refusing to find the president guilty if brought up for impeachment. And you just say that's because they want to stay in their jobs, because they like where they are and they want to continue. But I must continue. I must continue at this point, since all of this was not part of my original plan for this class. So let's take a look again at this list. I've added a few things. I've added the what about aspect, okay? So if you decry something and you say, well, how come you are putting those poor people out on the street by your by the cruel regulations that you just decided to invoke? And then the answer is, well, didn't you do that? What about? And then they look at some history. We do this with other countries. We say to China, how can you treat the Uyghurs like you are? And they say, well, didn't you treat the Indians that way? See, that's the what about politics, that they pin you to the floor with remembering something that you've done that is just like the thing that you're criticizing them for. There's a second thing, that is threatening and then negotiating. That's Mr. Trump's style. He threatens to bomb Iran, and then he decides not to. And that makes Iran very willing to negotiate. So threats become a part of the political tactic. Yes, Alice?
He's saying,
Just a minute.
Dallas?
Go.
all right, this man is saying to the Danes, we want to buy Greenland. And then he says, and if we don't get it that way, we'll have to get it another way.
Right. Threats are very effective in softening the opposition. Agreeing with adversaries. What do you think of John Fetterman as a Democrat? Do you disagree with what he's doing by being nice, by going over the aisle, reaching over the aisle to Republicans and doing some things that Republicans want to happen, but other Democrats resist? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, who thinks it's good? Who thinks it's bad? Okay, all right. Isn't that what we ask our politicians to do? that to reach across the aisle and do things in a bipartisan way. But when somebody does it, you get all pissed off. Okay? Why not? Why? Isn't that what we want? Because actually, Fetterman is very smart and he's doing the right thing. Because by reaching across the aisle, by visiting Mar-a-Lago, by being nice with President Trump, by agreeing to confirm department secretaries whom you dislike and who are not fit for the job, but he agreed to confirm them, like Pam Bondi.
It seems like kowtowing to me.
By doing that, he has ingratiated himself with the Republicans and with Trump particularly. And consequently, he will be more effective as a senator. That is good politics. Whether you agree with me or not, think about it. And think about what he can accomplish, because he's still a Democrat. He's still doing things that we want Democrats to do. He hasn't abandoned his party or its goals or his ideals. What he has done is shown us the value of bipartisanship.
I think if you plug this into what you were saying before, he's moving the boundaries of what a tribe should include. You know, he's
That's
questioning he's moving outside of his tribe into a group.
Yes,
And,
absolutely.
and
That's
we
a
want to
good-
make the group, I mean, in our most idealistic moments, we want the group of the whole world to come together as a tribe maybe, or as a close-knit group. If our world could come together, we could save the planet. You know, but that's getting so far out that the borders of the group are, but it's questionable whether he has the right to move the group or move the whole borders to the group.
Well, he's still part of the Democratic caucus. And thank you. That's a very perceptive take. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that what he is doing is he's moving towards power. That's why I think all political action is geared towards power. He knows the powers with the Republican Party. So he's moving towards power, and that power will enable him, as you say, to maybe remain a senator. You know, but it's all about power. I disagree with your
Well, what
definition.
you just said disagreed with yourself. Because what you said was that the power that you're describing was being used as a means to an end, which is what I've been saying. You're not really disagreeing with me. It is a means to an end, just like money. We all love money, but money by itself is just money. It doesn't do anything for you. You just put it in a box and you bury it under your mattress or whatever. But money gets you stuff. It's a means to an end. And power is a means to an end. But someone who is deranged, like Trump, seems to want power more than anything else. But as I've said, it's a means to an end. What is the end for Trump? It's to be loved. It's to get the Peace Prize. It's to get a gold statue like the Romans put up, turning the emperor into a god. Do you think Trump wants to be a god? You think he wants a statue in Washington? Even taller than the Washington Monument? Okay, that's what power is for. It's to get things like that.
Say power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolute.
That's a good expression.
That's what the man said. He said absolute power tends to corrupt absolute. Lord Acton.
Thank you.
He was a personal friend of mine.
Yes, Dallas.
I was wondering if Fetterman's senators disagree with his policy.
I'm
Is
sorry.
he causing dissension in his party?
Well, if there is, I'm not aware of it. It's possible, but I don't know. I think they're smart enough to recognize what the benefit of what he's doing. Okay, what else? Set an example. I'm trying to think of who's giving us an example. Well, I had a great idea, but I can't give you an example. Well, Fetterman is setting an example, but that I've already talked about him. This was somebody else. Lincoln?
Or Martin Luther King.
Yes. Well, it depends how much virtue you're willing to demonstrate in public. Okay. At any rate, these are all political methods that are used to gain whatever it is that you want to gain power, to gain status, to gain respect, to gain long-term job, the benefits, and security. And we engage in all or at least some of these. I remember when George Bush was the president and we were contemplating a war with Iraq. And I joined a march that went down Market Street. And I was terribly disappointed in that march. My wife and I were both marching against the war in Iraq. But all around us were people who were marching for a whole variety of different reasons, even though the purpose of the march was to protest the war. But we had people next to us with signs promoting gay rights and signs promoting environmentalism. And so a whole host of different purposes, and I found that the group, it was a very loose-knit group, obviously not a tight one. Okay, moving on. One more thing from last week I promised to give you, and I ran out of time, and I'm running out of time today. Positive and negative aspects of identity politics. Positive aspects of identity politics. It's good to be part of something bigger than you are by yourself. How many of us feel that way? I think we all do, but I would believe that most people, at least, would recognize that they would like to be part of something bigger. Sharing values and goals, belonging, having a purpose, achieving goals that you can't do on your own, but that the group can do. Personal growth in knowledge, because you're learning a lot. You learn from other people in a group. And you're learning from whatever it is you're doing to reach the goals that the group has. Sometimes you learn methods that you didn't know before, and that was when people who are very competent in methods are sharing with you. For example, technology or finance or organization, to be recognized by others. That's part of the esteem of the Maslow hierarchy of needs, and a means for self-esteem, to be proud of what you're doing, and giving you meaning. Do we all need meaning in our lives? I think psychologists have concluded that we do. So all of those are positive aspects of identity politics, or at least joining groups, special interest groups. But what about the negatives? Sometimes they're toxic. These groups are toxic. Right now I see we have in the federal administration a highly toxic group. Inability to value other groups and their goals. Because just being in a group tends to exclude others outside of what you're doing if they're doing something similar. Possible hate and violence, discouragement and cynicism, real suffering if you are a target of hate, and opposing, and if you're in a group that opposes science and regulation, then that can be destructive. Does anybody else have any thoughts about either positive or negative aspects of identity politics? Fear. Okay. And what were you saying?
Of other groups.
Fear of other groups. Okay.
Suppressing creativity. Suppressing
Although
ideas.
it's my belief that creativity doesn't have to be suppressed. That especially if you go back to what I put on the board about if it's a loose group, creativity definitely is conceivable. If it's a tight-knit group, I think that tends to suppress creativity and create fear more than any other one would. But not all groups, all tribes are tight-knit. And when they are, as I said, it's situational, then at that point, maybe you can't be too creative. Like in a war. I mean, when you get a platoon fighting the enemy, you're not going to get too creative or too or too individual in your decisions. You have to obey what the lieutenant tells you. Yes, ma'am. Dallas?
I was thinking as you were talking, this is a tight-knit group, and we use lawsuit to get a positive result. That was entering college dorms, and we were lucky that we had a lawyer who went to court to make sure that we were admitted to the dormitory. And after he heard our case, he deliberated, and he said he'll give you 24 hours to let these 9 young ladies into the dormitory. Then I considered that a tight-knit group. The next one I considered loose because it was neighbors. And these people wanted to buy land and put up a nightclub. And we wanted tennis courts. So we tried picketing first. And that didn't go anywhere. So we had to go get a lawyer. Luckily, we had a lawyer in the neighborhood. And that was shut down. And we have tennis courts today.
Bravo. Good for sticking to your guns. Well, the clock says the class should be over. And I never did get around to talking about Americanization and assimilation, but we'll hold that for next week. So thank you for coming, and I hope to see you next time.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay. The clock says we're done.